Create the narrative, define the story, develop talking points.
It's talking points.
Talking points.
Black, see, that's another talking point. That's another talking point.
It's talking points.
Talking points.
Talking points.
Talking points.
Talking points. Talking points.
Talking points.
You always talking about some talking points.
We have a giant problem in this country with this whole right-left shit. You know, and this is what I was trying to say earlier when we were talking about the concept of classical liberals, because most people don't even know what the fuck that means.
My liberal principles are now becoming a conservative position. And I think I've had a little bit of an evolution. I'm probably a little more small government than I used to be. But the basic liberal tenets that I've had are the exact same things that I had probably literally 20 years ago.
When you say liberal, do you mean classic liberal?
I mean classical liberal, not progressive. And I go out of my way every week to try to explain the difference.
How would you describe your politics, your views?
I would describe myself as a paleo-conservative. I know that you are a libertarian. I used to be a libertarian for a long time in high school and college.
The word libertarian, strictly speaking, means an anarchist. It was originally used to describe communist anarchists of the Peter Kropotkin variety. The problem here in the United States is the good word liberal has been hijacked by social democrats.
If you're voting for a Republican, there's going to be a reason, because they're saying and offering things that you like.
And across the country, people are upset because the Republicans are not abiding by our principles.
There is a profound disappointment among the American people.
The Republican brand has been damaged, and we have to rebuild the trust of Republicans all across the country and here in California, because they don't believe what Republicans say anymore, because they elect someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's a rhino, a Republican in name only, and they expect all these great things. He made all these promises when he ran the first time. He's fulfilled none of them.
Because we keep winning elections, and then we keep getting leaders who don't do anything they promised.
And I completely agree that as soon as we start doing that, as soon as we start kicking out the bums, as soon as we start kicking out the people who are not doing what they've said they're going to do, that's when the party will have a resurgence.
Andrew railed against the establishment. He wanted to take down the institutional left. Now, are you saying there's an institutional right? But how do we do it? How do you take Mitch McConnell out as Senate Majority Leader? What's the opposition?
The American people were told, if only we have a Republican majority in the House, things will be different. Well, in 2010, the American people showed up in enormous numbers, and we got a Republican majority in the House. And very little changed.
Do Republican politicians not promise to do things for their Republican voters? Why else would you vote for a Republican politician unless they were offering you something, a tax cut for the middle class?
Then the American people were told, you know, the problem is the Senate. If only we get a Republican majority in the Senate and retire Harry Reid as majority leader, then things will be different. Well, in 2014, the American people rose up in enormous numbers, voted to do exactly that. We've had a Republican majority in both houses of Congress now for about 6 months. What has that majority done? First thing we did in December is we came back and passed a $1 trillion Cromnibus plan filled with pork and corporate welfare. That was the very first thing we did. Then this Republican majority voted to fund Obamacare, voted to fund President Obama's unconstitutional executive amnesty, and then leadership rammed through the confirmation of Loretta Lynch as Attorney General. Madam President, which of those decisions would be one iota different if Harry Reid were still majority leader? Not a one.
I just wanted more done for my people, because that's the name of the game. This is politics.
That's
you
right.
Put somebody in office, you get in return the things that you care about for your communities.
Not a one. This Senate operates exactly the same. The same priorities. And let me tell you why. It's not that this majority doesn't get things done. It does get things done, but it listens to one and only one voice. That is the voice of the Washington cartel, of the lobbyist on K Street, of the big money and big corporations. You know, if you go to the American people and ask, is reauthorizing the Ex-Im Bank a priority for you? The standard response for most of them will be, the what? They don't even know what this is. Let me tell you what it is. It is an egregious example of corporate welfare. It is the American taxpayers being on the dime for hundreds of billions of dollars in loan guarantees given out to a handful of giant corporations.
If the new right takes over the conservative movement, or
they want to destroy the conservatives as the enemy.
And the fact is, people want to talk to me. They don't want to talk to these boring conservatives because they want to hear. They want to learn about ideas whose time has come and not whose time has passed. That is conservatives.
And they're like, well, these conservatives, they're just idiots. They just live in their small cloistered world and they never think outside the box or anything like that. And I'm like, well, how do you explain black conservatives?
A kid raised without a dad is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school.
6 times more likely to drop out of school, 6 times more likely to drop out of high school.
And 20 times more likely to end up in jail.
Is 20 times more likely to go to jail, 9 times more likely to end up in prison.
Question is, why are 70% of black kids today raised without fathers?
Let me tell you what it is. It is an egregious example of corporate welfare.
I argue that there's a connection between that and the welfare state.
LBJ and the Great Society Act.
It only took a couple of million Tea Party people
All
to
they need
jack the whole
is-
party.
And like I said, we did not win that. Like, I don't know why Democrats keep saying it like the Tea Party
Well, you got
won
Ted
that.
Cruz.
No, they lost that battle. The Tea Party lost that battle to the elite of the Republican Party.
That's basically big money saying, the money people, as Scarborough calls them, saying, whoa, you Tea Party folks, you better watch yourself, okay? There's a reason why we're the establishment. We have the money and we rule. And so now money's shifting over to the Democrats, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, Democrats win.
And
You got Trump. You got Ted
because,
Cruz.
No, because they lost is why you got Trump. Because everybody was like so tired of losing. That's why you got Trump. If they would have had a victory in the Republican Party, then Trump would have never been there. It's just the simple fact that every single time the Republicans make promises, they break them. And it's not like you're not breaking any promises to the black community because you don't make any promises to the black community. But your white people got real mad when you start breaking promises to them. And that's where the Republican Party finds itself at now. That's why they have Trump, because they wouldn't listen when the base of the party kept telling the elites, hey, listen to us, pay attention. Oh, you not? Okay, we're here. Deal with him then.
Tons of people here, in terms of young people, love the alt-right. They know who I am. They love my stuff.
We also heard Kellyanne Conway describe it as a unifying speech. That is their view.
Yeah, it was not at all. He spoke only to his supporters. The grand tradition of these speeches is very simple. Unify people. Reach out to people who didn't vote for you, and of course a majority of people didn't vote for Donald Trump. But instead he just spoke to his supporters.
Too often, we Republicans, me included, have emphasized our message on the 10th Amendment, but not our message on the 14th. For too long, we Republicans have been content to lose the black vote because we found we didn't need it to win. But when we gave up trying to win the support of African Americans, we lost our moral legitimacy.
But one of the things we can do better is we don't have to be socially liberal. We just shouldn't be offensive.
You're practicing that?
No, I use irony, not sarcasm. Here's an example. When people, like, you say something and someone reply to be like, last I checked, blah, 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 blah. And I'll say to them, I go, what do you think saying last I checked added to your point? You're giving me valuable information and data, but you are trained to believe that it has to be couched in this sneering. It doesn't. Just give me the information. This is useful information.
What's it called when you let people in because of the color of their skin? Affirmative action actually negatively impacts the black community.
Katrina, welcome back to the show. You are one of the over 100 Democratic politicians calling on your party to moderate its official position on abortion.
A moderate position. My position is clear. I'm pro-life.
But it's not a matter that we're not conservative. We are.
No, and by and large, that's the funny thing. You talk about that on social issues. The black community tends to be more conservative, far more fiscally, it tends to be a little more liberal, whereas a lot of folks out there, most of the folks that I know these days, in the white community, I mean, which is virtually everybody I know but you, Ronell, they tend to be a little more socially liberal.
And unfortunately, the word liberal has just been mangled to the point where people don't understand what that is anymore.
By the progressives for a reason.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that they had these ideas of liberalism, like classical liberalism, freedom, liberty, individualism. When I talk to these leftist activists, these progressives,
this strain of libertarianism that's going through both parties right now and making big headlines, I think is a very dangerous thought.
So if you say you're a libertarian, you probably imply that you're either an anarchist or very close to it. If you say you're a classical liberal, you imply that, well, you're not an anarchist. You do think there is a necessity for government. So you're slightly more moderate.
We have talked a lot about the vast difference between more conservative Republicans versus centrist Republicans and how they think.
I think we're seeing really the breakdown of the center of America. I don't think there really is a political center anymore.
You take one red pill, not the whole bottle.
The big one, not the Reform Party against Pat Buchanan, who I guess pretty soon is going to be joining because he got thrown out of the Republican Party.
Tomorrow, Pat Buchanan is announcing that he will be a candidate for the presidency on the Reform Party.
I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, he wrote a book because, look, he's a Hitler lover. I guess he's an anti-Semite. He doesn't like the blacks. He doesn't like the gays. It's just incredible that anybody could embrace this guy. And maybe he'll get 4 or 5% of the vote, and it'll be a really staunch, right, wacko vote. I'm not even sure if it's right. It's just a wacko vote.
The biggest issue facing the black community today is father absence. They broke down our families. They removed the fathers from the home. Barack Obama tells you what happens when you remove the fathers from the home. You have
Stop misinforming people. Stop misinforming people.
I'm not.
To have groups of people that think in certain ways, the problem with ideologies, whether it's left-leaning or right-leaning, is it makes you automatically predisposed to ignore or to refute the concepts that are on the other side.
The incentives of social media, anything based on an ad model, is you're getting paid by the click. So all the incentives are aligned to cater to your outrage, to show you things that you either hate or love, which is going to show you ever more shallow versions of the opinions you disagree with, and ever more moralizing and extreme versions of the opinions you do agree with.
So this is what's hilarious, is you have a group who's united only by their opposition to progressivism. What do you want to do? They have no even close to unanimity. Some want a military junta, like just martial law. Some want complete liberty, meaning anarchy. Some want a restriction of the right to vote. Some want to accelerate. They want more leftism because they think if you accelerate and amplify, the system is going to collapse because of the inherent contradictions in leftism. So you have no consensus whatsoever.
There were actual swastikas there, though, which is sort of helps meet the definition of Nazism.
There were a lot of different folks there from a lot of different organizations. There were constitutional conservatives, there were libertarians there were national socialists such as ourselves, there were Southern nationalists, there were Confederate heritage defenders. We were coming together to say that we are going to stand together for our heritage, but the left wanted to attack all of us.
On the left, you have a wide spread of blunt force, whereas extremists associated with the right, whatever that really means, it's complicated terminology. You have extremist actions that are extremely elevated in terms of, mass shootings and things like that and bombings.
Pat, in your case, the charge is one that is so powerful in the American mind, given our history. The charge is Pat Buchanan is a racist.
All right.
So let me ask you.
Right.
But then I really started to see the demographics and things like order are a lot more important than political liberty or the size of government. So I started to read Samuel Francis, people like Paul Gottfried, among others, Patrick Buchanan. And so now I basically describe myself as a paleoconservative.
In 1992, when Pat Buchanan, who is regarded as a paleoconservative, teamed up with Murray Rothbard, who was regarded as a paleo-libertarian. So between those two men, you basically have everything that is happening today within this scene, meaning nationalism, trolling, flirting with racism, contempt for authority, skepticism toward the establishment.
I think that white identity and white nationalism is a little misleading. I think it's more accurate to say that the alt-right cares about Western
supremacy rather than white supremacy.
And we talk about that like the nanny state, all right? Like that's a conservative libertarian sort of talking point about the nanny state. But
and about where we are as a country and about my leftist friends. They don't think China is a big problem. My libertarian friends too want to keep trading with them.
The reason why, and I think a lot of conservatives don't really understand, like why are libertarians so against, or like not, against law enforcement. Let's just say that.
Are you a racist, Pat?
What does race do? I hate black folks. That's what racism means. I hate black folks. I want them discriminated against. I dislike them. I use bad words with them.
You have the moderate left. You have the progressive left. Barack Obama tends to be caught somewhere in the middle of that, although I think he leans more towards the moderate left.
President Obama's former faith director, Michael Wear, says supporting pro-life candidates just makes sense. The Reclaiming Hope author points out Indiana Senator Joe Donnelly, a pro-life Democrat in a red state.
I think he's trying to use populist rhetoric to cover up a right-wing agenda. If you look at his cabinet, they are far from the populism that he talked about.
The strongest divide in the country is not right versus left. The strongest divide in the country, I've called it populist versus elitist.
Yeah.
So you have elitists in the Democratic Party, you have elitists in the Republican Party, and you have the people.
Well, Senate Republicans simply don't have the same size of majority that House Republicans do. In the House, Republicans could afford to lose about 22 members, most of them moderates. They still only passed their bill by one Republican vote, but they had more wiggle room. You also have a situation where in recent years, the House Republican Conference has shifted to the right.
There are some people who refer to this movement as the Christian right, the new Christian right, religious right, and so forth.
Most of the women who are in the Senate Republican Conference do happen to be moderates, and it's an interesting dichotomy.
But Raphael Warnock is a true radical. Look, it's a pretty widely known secret in Washington that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats didn't want Raphael Warnock as their candidate. Stacey Abrams forced him through, though, and it's because he is so radical.
He's a genuine radical, but he's using non-radical examples like Denmark and Scandinavia to sell ideas I believe he really believes in. Hard socialism, not this democratic socialism nonsense he keeps talking about.
The Democratic Party, in my opinion, is as corrupt as they come. And the Republican Party is corrupt, but completely ineffective in many ways. Trump does not represent the Republican Party. And as you can see from Trump supporters, man, they do not like Republicans. I saw a video the other day. They walked up to a guy in Georgia with a Trump hat on. And a journalist asked him, will you be supporting Perdue and Loeffler? And he says, I don't know. We'll see. And they say, what's your focus? Are you concerned about the runoff? He says, I'm concerned about November 3rd and Donald Trump. Trump supporters, not Republicans. There's kind of an overlap because Trump used the Republican Party, but I digress.
The biggest hurdle we have to overcome is that so many of the deplorables, so many of the grassroots are so anti-establishment, they look at some of these congressmen and they go, why do I have to go out and vote for a rhino? Why do I have to walk a district for a guy who's a moderate who doesn't love President Trump?
Well, there's my other quote, which is you take one red pill, not the whole bottle.
When the Blue Dogs and many others in Congress says,
Blue Dogs are the ultra-conservative Democrats, usually hailing from red states. Or as Harry Truman would have called them, Republicans in Democratic clothing.
A blue dog is someone who is supposedly a fiscal conservative.
The president's not on the ballot next year, but all of you blue dog Democrats in the House are on the ballot, and the Republican National Committee is already after you on the radio.
The president is hosting a lunch with members of Congress today at the White House. He's inviting some moderate Democrats, like members of the Blue Dog Coalition.
It's Sherry Bustos, who's this, moderate, I don't know, she blue dog problem solver, she's a very moderate Democrat who was head of the DCCC.
Hi. It's been said that the main roadblock to this legislation in the House are the Blue Dog Democrats. I actually happen to think it's the pro-life Democrats.
But I have to be honest with you, your religious and political leaders have kept you in ignorance. The Bible is actually pro-abortion. That's a fact. It's Numbers 5:11 to 31. You can read it for yourself. I'm going to read you just a very small portion of it. But if you don't believe me, that's okay. Don't even Google it. Don't trust the internet. Don't trust any research. Just go pick up your own Bible. Wherever you have a Bible, turn to Numbers 5:11 to 31. So this portion says, if you have gone astray while married to your husband, and you have made yourself impure by having sexual relations with a man other than your husband, here the priest has put the women under this curse. May the Lord cause you to become a curse among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells or your womb miscarries. It is clear as day. There is no question about it. If you don't believe me, just go read the Bible. It is pro-abortion. It's not even pro-choice. It's pro-abortion.
Facts. Don't care about your feelings.
What is so controversial about saying all lives matter? And what does it say when somebody won't say that?
Sean, it was a pathetic display. It was plantation politics in its finest hour, the continued enslavement of black people emotionally by the Democrat Party with this destructive liberal ideology. And they know it. They're whoring for votes. They know that's what they're doing. The liberal ideology has been very destructive for the black community for the last 50 or 60 years. Poverty is now generational. It's a lifestyle. The unemployment is obscene. They have to send their kids to failing public schools, drug and alcohol addiction, neighborhoods that are crumbling, all under Democrat control. They need to get off their knees and stop this stuff and take a real message to the American people, and especially the black community, that what they have done, they deserve an apology for from the Democrat Party.
You take one red pill, not the whole bottle.
I guess you can use a snappy slogan like defund the police, but you know you've lost a big audience the minute you say it, which makes it a lot less likely that you're actually going to get the changes you want done.
And then Representative-elect Cori Bush, also a Democrat, echoed that sentiment, saying, with all due respect, Mr. President, let's talk about losing people. We lost Michael Brown Jr., we lost Breonna Taylor, we're losing our loved ones to police violence. It's not a slogan, it's a mandate for keeping our people alive. Defund the police.
Defund the police. I don't know of any of the Democrats in the caucus that are for defunding the police. We're not for that whatsoever.
They got the nominee they wanted in Joe Biden, who's, lifelong career as a centrist and a find the common ground kind of guy in D.C. So, what is it they actually want? Do they want the squad just to go away? Do they want them to be quiet? Do they want progressives to, not hold the views that they hold? What is it that they're actually advocating for here?
For the Republicans, they think, the left's the same. The Hillary Clinton hate the Bernie people. They really hate them.
The battle between moderates and progressives in the Democratic Party appears to be heating up.
And when you're talking about basically Green New Deal and all this socialism, that's not who we are as a Democratic Party.
If we are classifying Tuesday as a success from a congressional standpoint, we will get torn apart in 2022. We need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Because while people think it doesn't matter, it does matter. And we lost good members because of that.
Pointing fingers and telling each other what to do, it deepens the division in the party, and it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to pour gasoline on these already very delicate tensions in the party.
All right, we could sit back and watch them go at each other. We need to use these deep divisions against them. A divided foe is far easier to conquer.
Progressives thought they'd overtaken the Democratic Party. Now they're in despair. They're not wrong, honestly. That despair, peppered with some rage, is certainly the prevailing sentiment I've seen within the anti-establishment left.
And some of them very far left.
The far left and the far, far left.
The radical left.
I'm a proud, moderate, conservative Democrat.
Is a consistent hostility to the center right.
But I can tell you, this country wants a moderation. This country, you run your life, you run your business from the middle, not from the fringes.
It's a scam. It's a leftist scam. Hold on, let me finish. It's a leftist scam. I truly believe it's a leftist scam.
Left of center bias.
One specific block of Republican voters, and that was the religious right.
And for me, Christian means something important. It's an important term. And frankly, and I'm betraying my political biases right now, but I do that regularly. Frankly, I don't see much that I would identify as Christian in the actions and the agenda of the religious right.
Right. And it's not just from the conservatives. They're also from liberal firms as well.
Are you all confident that the pro-life Democrats are not going to have their arms twisted by Nancy Pelosi, and that they are going to, not waver from this? And more specifically, what are you all as Republicans doing to voice solidarity with them? Because I think if there's any group in the Congress right now that needs our prayers, it's those courageous pro-life Democrats.
Jewish kids left the Bronx and Brooklyn and took their left-wing politics with them.
The entire Democratic Party is marching off a left-wing cliff.
But listen, I do think there is substance here, Tucker, when those 116 largely neocons.
Neoconservatism.
Black folk, for the most part, became just extensions of a milquetoast neoliberal Democratic Party.
You got a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party.
They think that Joe Biden is a neoliberal. They support the Green New Deal. They want to pull back on military engagement. Would agree with you across the board. But this year, they say this election is too important. I can't waste my vote on a Green Party candidate.
And that's why the emphasis in democratic socialism is on democracy.
Stalin, Trotsky, the rise of fascism, the war in Spain, the splits within the left, the New Deal.
Communists argued with socialists who argued with Zionists.
Is it going to be, as he ran on, a more, centrist administration, or is it going to be primarily run by people far to Biden's left? And in two different ways, right? It could be because there are deep cracks in the Democratic coalition, and not just between so-called moderates or centrists and people who are more extreme or more progressive, but even within the left base, you've got the sort of the Bernie wing of the party that is much more interested in an aggressive left-wing economic agenda, and then you've got the other wing of the Democratic base, which is primarily interested in a cultural woke agenda.